Have you ever felt like you were moving fast, but getting nowhere? Your mornings are rushed, your nights are drained, and life feels more like a loop than a journey forward. Maybe you've told yourself, change takes time, big plans, perfect timing. But here's the truth. 1 week, just 7 days, is all it takes to unlock a completely different version of yourself. Not by waiting for the right moment, but by choosing to begin right now. And the best part? That transformation doesn't come from something extraordinary. It starts with the ordinary. How you wake up, how you eat, how you move, what you write, what you consume, and what you stop doing so you can finally hear your own thoughts again. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 6 simple habits I practiced for just 1 week, and how they completely changed the way I live, think, and feel. No magic formulas, no shallow tips, just raw, real experiences that pulled me out of autopilot and helped me take back control of my life, one habit at a time. We'll explore how waking up early rewired my mornings and gave me calm instead of chaos. Why daily movement isn't just about the body, but a return to inner clarity. How journaling became a tool to untangle the mess in my mind. Why slowing down while eating helped me finally listen to what my body needs. And how cutting back on screens gave me the space to feel more alive than ever. And lastly, I'll reveal a 6th habit that no one really talks about, a simple but sacred practice that brought stillness back into my day and helped me reconnect with life beyond the noise of technology. You don't need to change your entire life. You just need to change how you live each day. Start today, and everything begins to shift. Habit 1. Waking up early, Day Psalm. I used to think waking up early was a punishment, something reserved for ultra-productive CEOs or overachievers with perfectly planned lives. That wasn't me. I was the kind of person who hit the snooze button 3, sometimes 4 times, pulling the blanket over my head and bargaining with time. Mornings were chaos, rushed, sloppy, stressful. I never really started my day, I just stumbled into it. And I didn't realize how much this affected my mindset until everything began to shift. It all began with a small, firm decision. Wake up at 5 a.m. every single day for 1 week. Just 1 week. I didn't have grand expectations. In fact, I expected to fail. The first morning was brutal. The alarm went off in complete darkness. My body begged me to stay under the covers. My mind invented every excuse possible. But I got up, and that first day felt like a war with myself. My eyelids were heavy, my thoughts foggy, and for a while, I questioned whether this was even worth the effort. But I stayed with it. By the 3rd day, something changed. As I stood on my balcony in silence, I noticed something I had never truly appreciated: stillness. The air was cool. The sky, still wrapped in early twilight, began to shift gently into soft hues of orange and gold. The world was quiet, peaceful, and I, for once, felt ahead of the day, not behind it. That moment didn't just feel good, it felt sacred. It felt like the kind of space I had been missing all along. With those extra early hours, I began creating a rhythm. Nothing complicated. I would start with light movement, a few stretches, or a slow jog around the block. No pressure to perform, just enough to awaken my body. I found that even 10 minutes of movement was enough to shake off sleepiness and infuse me with energy. Then came a few minutes of meditation. I'd sit in stillness, eyes closed, focusing on my breath, and something as simple as that, breathing with intention, had the power to reset my entire mindset. I'd then take a moment to ask myself one question: what kind of day do I want to create? That one question, asked in the silence of morning, helped me stop reacting to life and start designing it. And breakfast, it stopped being a task I rushed through. I began preparing it with care, sitting down with a warm mug of coffee, and eating slowly. For the first time, I noticed the smell of toasted bread, the comforting aroma of black coffee, the way the morning light poured across the table. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was a ritual, a gentle way to tell myself, you matter. Your peace matters. Start with intention. What surprised me most wasn't the productivity boost, though that came too. It was the inner clarity. The early hours, free from distraction and noise, became a pocket of time that belonged only to me. It gave me space to think clearly, to breathe fully, to begin the day grounded. And in that space, I started hearing my own thoughts again, not the endless to-do list or outside opinions, but my own inner guidance that often got lost in the noise. One morning, standing barefoot on my balcony, I watched the sun rise fully above the city skyline. It wasn't a dramatic scene, no fireworks, no music, just the slow, golden bloom of a new day. And yet, I felt this immense wave of gratitude rush over me. Gratitude not just for the sunrise, but for the fact that I was awake enough to see it, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally present. That moment left a mark on me. It reminded me that a calm start doesn't just change your day, it changes you. Waking up early didn't turn me into a superhero. I didn't suddenly become perfect or accomplish every goal I had ever dreamed of. But it did give me a foundation, a place to return to each day where I could begin with clarity, focus, and calm. It reminded me that time isn't something you chase, it's something you honor, by being present with it. You don't need to wake up at 5 a.m. to feel this shift. Maybe for you, it's 6:30, or just 15 minutes earlier than usual. The exact time isn't the point. What matters is the choice to own your mornings rather than survive them. What matters is carving out space where you're not reacting to the world, but reconnecting with yourself, your breath, your movement, your thoughts, your calm. That 1 week changed me. Not because I became someone else, but because I finally created space to remember who I was, underneath the noise, beneath the rush. And that, more than any productivity hack, is the kind of power I'll never trade again. Habit 2. Daily exercise. Tap the duck hang enge. I used to be the master of excuses when it came to exercise. Too tired, too busy, too much going on. I convinced myself that movement was optional, something I'd get around to later, as if later ever actually came. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't avoiding exercise because I didn't have time. I was avoiding it because I didn't want to face the discomfort that came with starting. I didn't want to feel sore, awkward, or like I was failing before I even began. But 1 week, just 1 week, of committing to daily movement changed all of that in a way I never expected. I made a quiet promise to myself. Move your body every single day for 7 days. That's it. Not hours in the gym or punishing routines. Just 20 intentional minutes a day, yoga, light jogging, or basic strength training. I gave myself the freedom to mix it up, to keep things interesting, to meet my body where it was, not where I thought it should be. The first day was clumsy. I stretched like someone who had forgotten they even had muscles. My breath felt shallow. My body resisted every movement. But underneath the physical resistance was something deeper, a confrontation with the mental weight I'd been carrying. Moving my body forced me to show up for myself in a way I hadn't in a long time. It wasn't about appearance. It was about presence. By the third day, something subtle began to shift. I woke up with a little more energy. My thoughts felt clearer. My mood was lighter. I wasn't snapping at minor inconveniences or dragging through my tasks. There was a quiet strength building inside of me, not just in my body, but in my spirit. I started to crave that time with myself. Not because it was easy, but because it felt real. One morning, I laced up my sneakers just as the sun began to rise. The streets were still, the air crisp. As I jogged through the neighborhood, it felt like the world belonged to no one else but me. Each step was like a release of tension, of doubt, of the noise I didn't even realize I had absorbed. It was just me, my breath, and the rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement. And in that simple moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. Not the kind that comes from escaping life, but the kind that comes from returning to it. I wasn't running away. I was running into myself. Around midweek, I tried yoga, something I had always written off as too slow or not challenging enough. I thought I wasn't flexible enough, that I'd look ridiculous, but I tried anyway. I followed a short guided session online. Awkward at first, but as I moved through each pose, I started to listen differently, not just to the instructions, but to my own body. The tension in my hips, the tightness in my shoulders, the shallow breath I didn't even notice I was holding. Yoga taught me something I didn't expect: stillness is not weakness. It's strength. Strength in choosing presence over performance, in listening instead of pushing. By the sixth day, I realized something profound. Exercise had become a sanctuary, a space where I could release the burdens I didn't have words for. I didn't need to talk or explain. I just had to move. And in that movement, I found answers. I found peace. It wasn't about burning calories or chasing a six-pack. It was about choosing to take care of the vessel that carries me through this life, and in doing that, honoring everything else that lives inside of me. And yes, the physical changes came. My posture improved. I felt stronger. My body felt lighter, more agile, more awake. But the real change was in my mind. The clarity, the emotional steadiness, the way I responded to stress, or didn't let it control me. Even small things, like washing dishes or taking a phone call, felt more manageable. Because I had already done something harder that morning. I had already shown up for myself. Daily exercise didn't just strengthen my body, it reconnected me to it. It reminded me that movement is a language, a way to speak to your soul when words fall short. Whether through a run, a stretch, a quiet flow on the mat, or dancing in your living room, you are telling yourself, I am worth this time. I am worth this care. If you've been putting it off, thinking movement is a luxury you don't have time for, let me tell you this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be honest. And those 20 minutes a day? They may just become the most powerful minutes of your entire week. Not because of how far you go or how fast, but because of how deeply they bring you back to yourself. Habit 3. Journaling. Viet Nyat Ki. I used to roll my eyes at the idea of journaling. It always seemed like something reserved for overly emotional teenagers or people with too much time on their hands. I thought, why write things down when I could just think through them in my head? Life was moving too fast, and sitting still with a pen and paper felt like a waste. But everything shifted the week I decided to give it a real chance. 1 week of showing up with a blank page every night. No filters, no expectations, just honesty. I started simple, nothing fancy. A plain notebook, a pen I liked the feel of, and 10 minutes before bed. The first night, I stared at the page for what felt like forever. Unsure of what to write, I thought I had nothing to say. But then, like a small crack letting in light, I began writing about how my day had gone, what annoyed me, what lifted me up, what I wished I had done differently. As the words started flowing, I realized something powerful. There were things I had been holding in without knowing it. Words I hadn't said out loud. Emotions I hadn't processed. Patterns I hadn't noticed. It was like pouring clutter out of a crowded room in my mind. And the relief was almost instant. By the third night, I started recognizing my own mental loops. The same frustrations, the same insecurities, the same stories repeating themselves. But this time, instead of letting them run wild in my head, I could see them clearly on paper. And something about seeing it all laid out made it easier to challenge, to question, to gently ask myself, is this true? Is this helping me grow? Or is this keeping me stuck? That space, that pause between the thought and the truth, is where real self-awareness was born. Then came a practice I had only heard about but never tried, gratitude journaling. I began dedicating a small section each night to list just 3 things I was grateful for. Some days it was deep, like the support of a close friend or a breakthrough moment. Other days it was simple, a warm cup of tea, the sound of rain, or a moment of unexpected laughter. But no matter how small, this habit began to shift something inside me. Instead of ending the day focused on what went wrong or what I lacked, I ended it remembering what was good, what was still working, what was enough. The more I wrote, the more I began to see journaling not as a task, but as a mirror, one that didn't distort or judge, but simply reflected who I really was. And it wasn't always pretty. Some entries were filled with doubt, fear, or confusion, but even those became part of the process, because acknowledging them gave me power. Ignoring them had only made them louder. Writing them down, owning them, softened their grip. I also began tracking small personal wins. Not grand achievements, but subtle moments of growth. A difficult conversation I handled with calm. A workout I didn't skip. A boundary I finally set. These became anchors, evidence that I was moving forward, even on days it felt like I wasn't. On one particular night, I found myself writing about a stressful interaction at work that had lingered in my mind. As I unpacked it on the page, I realized what was really bothering me wasn't the other person, it was my need for control, for validation. That kind of clarity didn't come from thinking harder. It came from writing freely. Journaling became more than reflection. It became healing, a quiet form of therapy that didn't require an appointment or permission. Just presence. It gave me the space to untangle emotions that didn't make sense, to explore dreams I was too afraid to say out loud, and to comfort parts of me that had been neglected. It was private, sacred, and surprisingly powerful. And over time, those 10 minutes became something I looked forward to. The blank page stopped being intimidating and started becoming inviting. It wasn't about writing perfectly or being profound. It was about being real. It was about making space in a noisy world to listen, truly listen, to my own voice. If you've ever dismissed journaling as pointless or soft, I understand. I did too. But 1 week of honest writing might just reveal more about yourself than months of running from your thoughts. It might show you that you've been carrying burdens you don't need to carry, believing stories that aren't true, and missing out on the quiet strength that lives within you. Pick up a notebook. Start with today. Write what you feel, what you fear, what you hope for. Let it be messy. Let it be real. That's where the gold is, not in the words, but in the courage to face them. Habit 4. Mindful eating and Wang Chan Naim. I used to eat like life was a race I had to win, fast, distracted, and on autopilot. Meals were rarely moments of enjoyment. More often than not, I'd eat while checking emails, scrolling through my phone, or watching whatever was trending online. I never paused to notice what I was putting into my body. Food became fuel, yes, but it also became noise. Background activity. Another checkbox in the daily routine. And because I wasn't truly present while eating, I constantly overate. I felt bloated, tired, and disconnected. It wasn't until I tried mindful eating for 1 week that I finally understood how much I was missing, not just in my food, but in my life. The experiment was simple. No screens, no multitasking, no rushing. I cleared the table. I silenced my phone. I set my fork down between bites. And before the first mouthful, I took a deep breath. That one breath, a pause before eating, was powerful. It shifted me out of automatic mode and into awareness. It reminded me that food is not just something to consume. It's something to experience. The first meal I had mindfully wasn't fancy. Just a bowl of rice, some steamed vegetables, and grilled tofu. But as I sat there, no distractions, no noise, and took my time chewing, I noticed something I hadn't in years: flavor. Real flavor. The subtle sweetness of the carrots, the warmth of the spices, the comforting texture of the tofu. It was as if my senses had been asleep and were now wide awake. And something even more surprising happened. I didn't eat as much. Because for the first time, I could actually hear my body whispering, "That's enough." I wasn't chasing fullness or trying to feel better. I was simply there. Over the next few days, this habit began to change the way I thought about eating entirely. I wasn't just slowing down. I was tuning in. I started noticing which foods made me feel light and energized, and which ones left me sluggish and heavy. My choices began to shift without any force or guilt. I started reaching for fresher ingredients, more colorful vegetables, whole foods that felt alive. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My body was speaking, and I was finally listening. One morning, I sat with a warm bowl of oatmeal. Normally, I would have eaten it while standing in the kitchen or checking messages. But this time, I sat at the table. I watched the steam rise. I took a bite and noticed the creamy texture, the hint of cinnamon, the gentle sweetness of honey. It was slow, calm, and deeply satisfying. That meal didn't just nourish me physically, it grounded me emotionally. It set a peaceful tone for my entire day. As the week progressed, I also began to recognize the emotional habits tied to food. I had never truly paid attention to how often I ate out of stress, boredom, or restlessness. It wasn't hunger, it was avoidance. Mindful eating helped me spot that pattern. Instead of grabbing snacks to fill an emotional gap, I started asking myself what I was really needing. Maybe it was rest. Maybe it was connection. Maybe it was simply silence. That awareness, born not from judgment but from presence, became the most healing part of the journey. One evening after a long, exhausting day, I found myself craving something sweet. I opened the pantry, hand already reaching for a chocolate bar. But instead, I paused. I took a breath. I asked myself, am I actually hungry? Or am I just looking for comfort? That question landed like truth. I made a cup of herbal tea instead, curled up on the couch, and simply rested. It wasn't deprivation, it was care. Mindful eating didn't require me to count calories, follow a diet, or restrict anything. It simply asked me to be there, fully, lovingly, without guilt or distraction. It became less about control and more about connection. A connection to my body, to the moment, to the real needs hidden beneath the habit. And what I discovered was profound. Food tastes better when you're present with it. Your body responds better when you respect it. And your mind quiets down when you slow things down and simply feel. That quietness, that stillness between bites, is where transformation begins. This practice isn't just about how or what you eat. It's about how you live. When you stop rushing through meals, you stop rushing through your life. You begin to see that every bite can be a meditation, a reminder that you're alive, worthy, and capable of choosing with intention. If eating has become another blur in your already busy life, take one meal, just one, and give it your full attention. Turn off the noise. Sit down, breathe, taste, feel. You might be amazed at how something so ordinary can become so deeply healing. Habit 5. Limiting screen time. Joy Han Thoi Jian Dung Thiet Bai. It started with a quiet frustration I couldn't name. I would finish the day feeling drained, overstimulated, mentally foggy, yet when I looked back, I hadn't really done much that fed my soul. Hours had slipped through my fingers, lost to endless scrolling, mindless videos, and the dull comfort of blue light. My phone had become both a lifeline and a leash. I reached for it out of habit, not intention, and every tap, every swipe, pulled me further away from the real world. Eventually, I realized something had to change, not because I hated technology, but because I missed myself. That's when I made a decision. Limit my recreational screen time to just 1 hour per day. Not forever, just 1 week. 1 week to see what would happen if I broke free from the dopamine loop. If I chose presence over pixels, I tracked that time carefully. No mindless scrolling, no binge watching, no wandering into the black hole of digital distraction. Only essential usage was allowed. And even that, I tried to do with awareness. At first, it was harder than I expected. I didn't realize how deeply woven my screen habits had become. I'd reach for my phone during every pause, waiting in line, eating lunch, even walking from one room to another. It had become a reflex. Removing that reflex forced me to confront something uncomfortable: silence, stillness, the space where I had to sit with my own thoughts instead of drowning them in content. But that space, as it turns out, is where my life actually lives. As the days passed, something beautiful unfolded. With no screen calling for my attention, I suddenly had time. Time I thought I didn't have. I opened a book that had been collecting dust for months. I picked up a pencil and started sketching again, even if it was just rough doodles. I went for walks without earbuds, just listening to the wind in the trees, the rhythm of my own breath, the sound of my feet on the ground. The world, stripped of filters and notifications, felt richer, more vivid, more alive. One of my favorite moments that week happened at a quiet little cafe. I brought nothing but a notebook and a pen. No phone, no distractions. I ordered coffee, sat by the window, and just wrote. Ideas poured out. Thoughts I hadn't been able to access for weeks suddenly found space to breathe. I planned out goals, reflected on my habits, even journaled a few personal realizations. And what surprised me most wasn't how much I wrote, but how deeply I felt connected to myself in that moment. Without a screen between me and the world, I was present, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That clarity was something 1,000 motivational videos could never give me. As my screen time decreased, my sleep improved dramatically. I used to end my nights scrolling until my eyes were sore, waiting for exhaustion to force me into sleep. But now, I created a wind-down ritual, reading a few pages from a real book, meditating, or simply lying still and breathing deeply. My mind felt quieter. I fell asleep faster, stayed asleep longer, and woke up more refreshed. It was like my brain finally got a chance to recharge without being plugged into stimulation all night. Emotionally, I felt lighter, without the constant stream of news, drama, and comparison from social media. My anxiety levels dropped. I stopped measuring my life against curated highlight reels. I paid more attention to the people around me, real conversations, eye contact, laughter that wasn't shared through a screen but through shared presence. It reminded me that connection isn't built through likes or shares. It's built in moments where two people are fully there. This habit didn't require me to throw away my phone or disappear into the woods. It simply asked me to draw a line, a gentle boundary between what served me and what stole from me. Technology isn't the enemy, distraction is. And when I removed the excess noise, what remained was beautiful focus, creativity, stillness, connection. If you're constantly feeling behind, anxious, overstimulated, maybe it's not that you lack motivation. Maybe you're just too digitally drained to feel your own fire. Try stepping away, even for a little while. Let yourself feel bored. Let your mind wander. Let your attention return to the people, the places, the small joys that screens can never replace. You might just rediscover parts of yourself you didn't even know had gone missing. Habit 6. Digital detox moments. Dao Quang Lang Kong Kong Nagi. After I had limited my screen time to just 1 hour a day, I thought I had already won the battle against digital overwhelm. But I was wrong. There was still a constant hum, a subtle itch in the back of my mind that kept pulling me toward my devices, checking for messages, refreshing timelines, tapping through stories without meaning. That's when it hit me. Reducing screen time is a step. But true clarity requires something deeper, full disconnection. Not just cutting down, but carving out sacred spaces of silence, free from the reach of technology. I called them digital detox moments. and they turned out to be the most powerful part of my week. I started small, choosing a 2-hour window each evening, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., and declaring it a no-tech zone. No phone, no email, no notifications, just me, the physical world around me, and whatever felt real. At first, it felt strange. My hands would unconsciously reach for my phone, even when I had nothing to check. The quiet felt unnatural, even uncomfortable. But then, like fog clearing after a storm, I began to notice something profound. My thoughts started getting louder. Not in a noisy way, but in a clear, resonant, honest way. I could hear myself again, the real me, the one buried under notifications, group chats, and algorithm-fed opinions. During those hours, I didn't just relax, I reconnected. I sat down with a physical book, and for the first time in months, read without checking the time. I picked up a pen and wrote in my journal by candlelight, letting the words pour out in a way they never could when half my attention was online. I didn't feel rushed. I didn't feel scattered. I felt still, in the most nourishing way. And something beautiful happened in my relationships too. I started having deeper conversations with the people around me, with no phone buzzing beside me. I looked into their eyes more. I listened without waiting to respond. I laughed without the urge to capture it. Those moments weren't content for social media, they were simply mine. Pure, present, unfiltered. One particular night stays with me. I stepped out onto my balcony with nothing but a notebook and a blanket. The sky was wide and quiet, the moon soft and glowing. I sat and wrote by hand under its light, reflecting on where I was in life, what I was grateful for, what I was still working through. No Wi-Fi, no screen, no curated noise. And yet, I had never felt more connected, not to the internet, but to myself. It was like tuning into a frequency I'd long forgotten, one that whispered instead of screamed, that guided instead of distracted. These detox moments didn't just bring me peace, they amplified the other habits I had been building all week. My sleep became even deeper. Because my brain wasn't overstimulated before bed, my journaling became more honest, more vulnerable, more healing. I began savoring my meals more, tasting, feeling, and appreciating. I started doing evening yoga sessions without a video playing, just flowing with what my body wanted. And waking up early felt more natural, because I had finally learned how to wind down. This wasn't just about unplugging. It was about plugging back in, to life, to breath, to relationships, to silence. It taught me that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. Answers I had been too busy to hear. By creating intentional moments without screens, I didn't lose anything. I gained everything I didn't know I was missing. If you feel scattered, overwhelmed, or like your life is passing in a blur of constant input, maybe what you need isn't more stimulation. Maybe what you need is stillness. Choose an hour, maybe two. Put your devices away. Let the world be quiet again. Sit with a book. Write something real. Take a walk and watch the sky change colors. Let presence take the place of performance. And remember, you were not born to live behind glass. You were born to feel your life fully, deeply, vividly. Conclusion: the quiet power of intentional living. In just 1 week, 6 simple habits created a profound shift, not just in my routine, but in how I live, breathe, and experience the world. Waking up early gave me back my mornings. Daily movement reconnected me with my body. Journaling helped me untangle the noise within. Mindful eating turned everyday meals into moments of presence. Limiting screen time brought clarity back to my mind. And carving out digital detox hours gave me something I didn't even know I was missing: silence, stillness, and the raw honesty of being fully here. These habits weren't revolutionary. They didn't require apps, expensive tools, or dramatic life changes. What they required was presence, the courage to stop running on autopilot and start choosing how I show up each day. The truth is, you don't have to overhaul your entire life to feel different. You just have to take back the moments you've been giving away to distractions, to pressure, to noise. Start small. Try one habit, one morning, 1 hour offline, one page in a notebook. Let that one act be the spark that leads you home to yourself. Because transformation isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It whispers through the stillness, the quiet rituals, and the choices made in private when no one's watching. If this video stirred something in you, share it with someone you care about. Let's make stillness and self-respect contagious. And if you're ready to go deeper on this journey with me, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. I have so much more to share. And I'd love to grow together. You deserve a life that feels like yours. Let's keep building it, one mindful habit at a time.